Very good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here at our very first Franchise Flywheel webinar. My name is Heather. I am going to be your behind the scenes kind of co-host. I'll be handling all of your chats and making sure that your speakers are getting on and off easily. And I just wanted to welcome you to this event series that is the very first one only for franchisees. Today, we have a whole panel of expert speakers that are going to talk to you about your industry specifically. And we have 2 hours to do it with, so I'm going to make sure that we get to it really quickly. With that being said, we have a little bit of housekeeping, just so you know the whole wherewithal. Some people don't know Zoom, some people do. You'll notice that with the webinar, your screens aren't on. So if you made yourself nice and pretty today, sorry, screens aren't necessary, and you're going to be muted the whole time. That way your speakers are going to be able to speak to you. But if you do hover onto the bottom of your screen, there is a chat box that you can chat where we will have myself and other moderators being able to respond to you. You can raise your hand if you have a problem, or you can also click on Q&A. So if any of our speakers are talking about anything that you're interested in, you can ask them a question and we will try to get to as many questions as possible. If you would also take a peek, there is a poll that we're going to have out. So we would love to hear back from you, and that will also tailor some of our conversations about everything that's going on. The presentation will be recorded and a video file will be sent out afterwards, as well as a post-event recap where we're going to have a survey. We also will have links for you to sign up for our next event, which is coming up on December 10th. So without further ado, I would love to introduce you guys to our hosts of the day. We have both Erik Van Horn, who is the co-founder of Franchise Flywheel. He has been franchising for almost 18 years as a franchisor, investor, and consultant. He's the host of Franchise Secrets podcast and the founder of the Franchise Tribe, a mastermind for growth-minded franchisees. Along with Erik, we have Brian Holmes, who is the CEO of Franchise Ramp, the premier franchise digital marketing agency built for franchisees by franchisees. Along with Erik, Brian is also the co-host of the Franchise Story podcast, one of the most listened to podcasts in the franchise industry. So Erik, Brian, so nice of you guys to be here today. Thank you so much for being with us, and I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Heather, for the awesome intro. So everybody, would like to welcome you to the first Franchise Flywheel event. Erik and I are super excited to have you all here and even more excited about today's lineup. We have an amazing keynote presentation from Dr. George Tinsley Sr., which some of you might know from episode 92 of the Franchise Story podcast. Today's given a presentation titled From Obstacles to Opportunities, and I don't think that there could be a better title or topic for what's going on in 2020 to a lot of us franchisees. Following George's keynote, we'll jump into an expert panel with 3 rockstar franchisees to talk about semi-absentee franchise ownership and their journey to get there, because we know that that's something that really is an interesting topic to most franchisees out there. So Erik, let's jump into what Franchise Flywheel is and why we started it.
Let's do it, man. This is exciting.
It is exciting. It is really exciting. So 2 years ago, in October of 2018, Erik and I launched the Franchise Story podcast. So it was something where we had a crazy idea. We were actually sitting in San Diego, like, you know what we should do? We love podcasts. Let's start a podcast. We didn't realize how much work it would be or what type of commitment it really meant to do that. But we were really excited about it. In October of 2018, we launched it. So a lot has really happened since October of 2018, just 2 short years ago. So Erik,
2 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 years ago, we were in San Diego. The weather was great, unlike it is here today. And we're like, you and I are such big podcast fans. We're like, let's just bring people into our world. And I had no idea that we would start to hear from all the different franchisees out there like that. And even more than that, just being able to get connected to so many more people in franchising, like George and some of the panelists today. So, and it made me just kind of reflecting back and thinking, we're kind of doing something again, like as we were first starting the Franchise Story podcast, we're like, let's just do it. The first episode was a disaster, by the way. And then we decided to stick to it. And we did that for 2 years. And you and I were talking the other day and like, how can we continue to serve franchisees? What's not happening out there that we wish was happening? And then we started to talk about the Franchise Flywheel event. But in the middle of all that, Brian, so 2 years, Franchise Story Podcast. I know you've done a lot of things. I want to hear some of the things that you've done. I launched, go ahead.
Yeah. So, this morning I was just reminiscing a little bit and thinking about like how to kind of give the scope and the weight of what we're trying to accomplish here with Franchise Flywheel. And I was looking at, between the two podcasts. So we started the Franchise Story, and Erik, the moderation is never enough. So he's like, what's better than one podcast? Two podcasts. So he launched Franchise Secrets. Between those two podcasts, we have had 181 episodes, 100,000 plus downloads. And it's been like you said, is we have had the opportunity to talk to so many people and to learn so much about franchising and develop like some true friendships in the franchise industry we wouldn't have developed otherwise. And so, during that time period, like for me, not only doing the podcast and being a franchisee and building my franchise businesses and going from, adding multiple concepts at that point, is I've also built Franchise Ramp, which is a true passion project for me, which is the digital marketing agency that a lot of people that are here and attending today, have come through, that world. And it's become one of the biggest marketing agencies really in the space. So what's the rest of your story? What else have you been up to?
Yeah, I got bored with one podcast. You were hogging all the good questions. And so I started the Franchise Secrets podcast, which is fun because it expanded outside of franchising to bring experts that are outside of franchising into franchising. And it was fun as you and I had a lot of discussions around that. Like you and I work so well together as unofficial partners in things. And it's because we have that abundance mindset. And you and I were just talking about that yesterday. So that's why I launched Franchise Secrets. I launched the Franchise Tribe Mastermind, and really it's come to a real clear realization for me that a lot of franchisees don't feel understood out there. They're not around their kind of people, their kind of owners, and they don't have an ability to solve problems with like-minded individuals. So the people that are in the Franchise Tribe Mastermind, they finally found their tribe. So that's been a lot of fun. And just a lot of friendships has developed out of that. I saw Stephen Verbs give us a little shout out earlier, and he's one of my new friends in there.
Yeah.
And then launched Mighty Dog Roofing. And so we should be getting our FDD this week or next week. And that's my first entry into the franchisor side. So I look back and like, holy cow, a lot's happened in 2 short years, and a pandemic as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, when we sat down and started talking about podcasts, I don't even think we understood the value of what a mastermind was, because at that point we hadn't even been in anything like that, never experienced anything like that. And so, that was really a big part of that story, and to realize that that's something the franchisee world needed. And, a lot of people have ideas. The cool thing about you, Erik, is that you deliver on your ideas. So it's safe to say that we both have a lot of things going on. So why would we want to go through this process of launching something new, something with such a big vision as what we have for Franchise Flywheel? We're essentially going from, hey, we have no idea how to do events, but let's build an event company that specifically serves franchisees. As we've got into the franchisor world more and the vendor world more, we've seen that most of the industry caters exclusively to franchisors. Like that is the center of the franchising universe, but there's so many franchisees out there, and who's actually catering to them? And our answer was no one. So we decided that we were going to do it. And that's why we're building Franchise Flywheel.
It feels a lot like when we first launched the podcast, but something a lot bigger and is going to have a lot more impact to more people. And we talked about it, like, do we have the time for this? And the answer is no, we don't, but nobody else is doing it. So let's just do it. And then we didn't want to have just a Zoom meeting and that's why we hired somebody to help us with this. And we've got a lot more that we're going to be doing. So everybody on this Flywheel event right now, this is the beginning. This is the birth of something that is going to be much bigger as we go into 2021. So you guys are part of it. Like, we're doing this with you. We're doing it for you. And we are designing this thing to be something that we would want to go to as franchisees. What would we want to learn? What would we want to experience? And what kind of actual live events would we want to get on a plane and go to and experience and to be around other like-minded people?
Yeah, we've had a lot of, we started with a huge vision here when we said that we were going to do this. We didn't say we were just going to do a couple hour Zoom meeting. We said, hey, let's build a entire day presentation that adds maximum value that we can in that. And we realized we were smart enough to bring Heather in, and Heather said, hey, maybe you don't want to start there. Let's start with something that's a little bit more accessible. Let's do a couple hour, meeting and like really chunk it down into something that's easier to grasp. But this is just a sample of what we intend to provide. There's a couple of things that I thought that we needed to make as components of it. Like, I personally have learned more from high performing franchisees than I've ever learned from any other source, more than I've learned in any book, more than I've learned from my franchisor. And we want to facilitate that. That's why we're doing expert franchise panels. Motivation and inspiration. There's so many successful people out there that have done really neat things and have, as a franchisee, I need those things. I need access to that motivation, access to that inspiration, and I want takeaways. The other component piece that we knew that we wanted to add and are still trying to figure out is opportunities to network with other like-minded franchisees. I tell people I've got more in common in a high-performing franchisee in another brand, in another industry, than I do with a low-performing franchisee or even an average franchisee in the systems that I work with. So opening up that world so that we all can connect together and not just have that. Like, one of my favorite sayings in franchising is we're in business for ourselves, but not by ourselves. And I think that's the entire franchise industry. We're all in trying to have this entrepreneurial dream, this entrepreneurial goal. We chose franchising as our path. Let's build this together.
And that's true. We're not in business for ourselves. What? Say that again. I just messed it up. Say that one more time.
We're in business for ourselves, but not by ourselves.
Yeah,
so we're entrepreneurs, we're business owners, just not
and
alone.
It's so easy to be a lone ranger out there, and it's so easy not to get connected out there. And so that may not be true for some of the people listening, but it can absolutely be true. And it's really dependent on you, not your franchisor or the franchisees that are in your market. There's a much bigger world out there, and we want to expose everybody to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what to expect from us and to expect from Franchise Flywheel. So the next thing that we have is we have an additional virtual event that's going to be December 10th. The idea behind that event is to do preparation for 2021. I know for a lot of people, 2020 has been a tough year. Let's sit down. Let's realize that, like, hey, January, it's a fresh new start. It's a fresh new year. Let's do everything that we can to prepare for an amazing 2021. So that's the theme and the focus of the December 10th event, which we'll give you guys a link for to register for at the end of this. Then we're doing an event on January 14th. This was our original target event. That event is going to be keynoted by Kevin Harrington, and our original theme was thrive or survive, and choosing to thrive is the idea. So it might be a little bit more heavy on motivation, inspiration, just get everybody excited, to jump back in, get their hands dirty, and get through whatever the struggles that they are facing. We also have a goal of our first in-person event in 2021. So that sounds a little crazy with COVID, but we're committed to doing it and pulling it off. And the overall vision is that in 3 or 4 years, there's thousands of franchisees going to a conference somewhere in the United States and talking about building and growing their franchise empire. We want it to be on their must attend list. So you go to 2 things every year that you're committed to from a business perspective. One of them is your franchise conference and Franchise Flywheel annual meeting. So that's the overall vision.
I love it. This is going to be exciting. I want to say one thing. When we're going to hear from George, we're going to talk about semi-absentee businesses, and that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. We already have questions coming in, and so I will absolutely define what I see as semi-absentee, and that'll be something that we talk to each of the panelists about. So Brian, I'm excited to get started.
Yeah, I'm super excited too. So once again, thanks everyone for attending. Without further ado, it's time to introduce today's keynote, Dr. George Tinsley. So I actually just have to read my notes because, like I said earlier, George was on episode 92 of the Franchise Story podcast. One of my favorite guests. As soon as we got to the end of that interview, I thought, how do I get George's story out to more franchisees, to more people? How do I get them in front of my team? And as soon as we came up with the idea of doing this, I knew that George was the person that I wanted to do the keynote. So Dr. George Tinsley Sr. is the president and CEO of Tinsley Family Concessions. He's a 6-time Hall of Famer, an entrepreneur, an author, podcast host, speaker, and franchisee. Tinsley is a CEO of Pingeo Inc., Tinsley Group Inc., and Tinsley Family Concessions, and they're collectively Tampa Bay's 3rd largest Black-owned enterprise and one of the fastest growing independent restaurant conglomerates in the nation. Tinsley and his family of 5 companies own more than 60 restaurant franchises in Florida and Kentucky. His road to success started with KFC, but has since grown his portfolio to include additional brands operating at street and airport locations that are anchored by Chili's, Wendy's, KFC, Payway, PF Chang's, Shula's Bar and Grill, Cigar City Brewing, and Comfy Cow. He's been a street-side KFC franchisee for 36 years in Central Florida, and his brands dominate at Tampa International Airport, Miami International Airport, and Muhammad Ali International Airport in Louisville, Kentucky. And he is also the author of The Determined Entrepreneur. George, welcome to the Franchise Flywheel event. We're incredibly excited to have you be here.
Good afternoon. I'm excited about being here myself. My first virtual presentation. How about that?
That's exciting.
Yeah.
We're all pushing limits today.
Yes, we are. And we'll get through it.
So as George is getting his camera on, I was just thinking as you read that, Brian, I've probably eaten at some of those restaurants and didn't even know it.
Absolutely.
So thanks for feeding me, George.
You are more than welcome, Erik, and great to meet you.
Same here.
Okay. So am I ready to go?
You are all set, George. The floor is yours.
Outstanding. Well, good afternoon, good morning to some, depending on your time zone. It's my pleasure to be here with you today to talk about my journey, which is turning obstacles to opportunities, which helped me become a fairly successful franchisee over the last 36 years. And so I'm going to take you through how it all started and walk you through a couple of those major challenges. I'm going to leave the remainder for the book, and hopefully you'll get a chance to purchase the book and dive into it and understand a little bit more about my journey, which really will be, I'm sure, similar to some of the journeys, some of the stories that you have in your journey to become a franchisee. So let's start by I was originally from Louisville, Kentucky, and of course that mates right up with Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's the home of KFC. Now, I joined KFC in 1976 after a teaching and coaching career and playing professional basketball prior to that, because I wasn't making much money as a school teacher and looking for a different opportunity after getting married and looking at raising a family. So a friend of mine worked with KFC, and therefore the opportunity to come out and interview for a position there. While going through the human resource process, they found out about my teaching skills, and they were just starting up a training department. And so therefore the opportunity came available. Little did I know that I would actually be working side by side with the Colonel himself. The picture you see before you in the center was the very first meeting that I had with the Colonel at the new training school that had been developed. And at that point, we became a team where he would actually come and visit one day or 2 days during our classes, and the floor was his while we worked on the basic management skills for a KFC. Keeping in mind now, I knew nothing about business, but this is where I had my start and got my career going. You'll see also here on the photos, 2 of our KFC restaurants, one in Arbondale, Florida, which is our very first restaurant. We opened in 1984, and the other is a non-traditional unit we have in Louisville, Kentucky, at the Muhammad Ali Airport. So let me walk you through George Tinsley's beginning. As I said, I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'll talk about how we got to these franchises that we have here. I was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and raised there by a lady by the name of Willie Tinsley, who took me in as a 7-month-old. She had one leg, couldn't read or write, walked on a crutch, and so she had a Social Security check that came in once a month. She would make an X on it. I'd take it to the local grocery store there, Webb's Meat Market, famous little grocery store there in the East End of Louisville. Went there and got that check cashed, and that's the way we survived. We moved around Louisville for some time until I was able to start school. And after getting enrolled in school and so forth, 4 years into that, the school closed down, and we moved into a brand new school. In that brand new school, all the students, the Black students that were coming in from the Black school that closed down, had to take a test, and to take that test to see where the placement would be. In the Black schools, we were a little bit, our curriculum was different from where the white schools were at that time, and so I didn't do well on that test. Little did I find out later that I got this sheet I took home to Mama. I called her to get her to fill that out, and took it back. I signed her name, took it back. The next thing I knew, I'd been put back a year. So that was my first major challenge that I had to deal with, because I was already getting tall, and the other students in the class were quite shorter. So that made me stick out like a thumb. So in my 6th grade year, the 6th grade teacher, because I wasn't a great student, actually called me up one day and said, George, why don't you just quit school and go get a job? Now, I thought that was a heck of a thing, and I'm sure you do too, that a teacher would say that to a student. So I went back and made up my mind that I was going to change some things and get my act together. Well, the very next year, I went into middle school, or junior high school at the time, middle school now. And this lady you see here beside me, she recognized that this poor little young man needed some assistance, some attention, some guidance. And she would see me going into the gym all the time during lunch, not going to lunch because I didn't have any money and was in a bad situation. She would bring sandwiches, oranges, bananas, and so forth to the gym. Her and the coach were good friends, the gym teacher, and together they recognized my situation and decided to help me through and getting me motivated. So she gave me a job as the projector boy, which is basically going around setting up that reel-to-reel film for presentation in the different classes. I was extremely proud of that job and excited about it. So it motivated me, gave me self-esteem. And so I didn't want to lose it. We had an agreement that made sure I didn't miss any school. I kept my grades up and all those things that you need to do to matriculate through. And so that's what she did. And I still today maintain a relationship with her. You see here that she attended one of my Hall of Fame functions. Well, 2 of them, both of these are Hall of Fame functions, and we still remain good friends. And she calls me her son. So that was another obstacle that really got me started again in the next step of my life. Well, in between here, Mama was getting older, and she actually sent me to I wanted these tennis shoes to be able to play on the street and on some of the playgrounds with with all the other guys because I didn't have any tennis shoes, and she was only getting that $65 check. So she finally pulled together some money, and she sent me to the store to get those tennis shoes. And so I went to the pawn store, local pawn store there in Louisville, and bought these tennis shoes and was so excited. The only bad part about it, at that time I wore a size 12 and a half, and these tennis shoes only went up to 11. So I had to squeeze those toes into those shoes, and that's why my feet are all screwed up right now. But I was excited to get those tennis shoes, and I got back home, and we were living with her son at the time. Got back home, and I ran in to tell her how excited and sure of the shoes. But unfortunately, at that time, Mama had passed. She passed during the time. I think she really knew that she was transitioning and didn't want me to see it. So she had sent me to get those shoes. So that was, once again, another major obstacle that really changed my life. And so therefore, I had to pull all of the teachings and learnings that I learned in the community and learned from my schooling and so forth to help me move on from there, because I was living with her son and his wife, and that was a different situation that I had to grow into, but we made it work. At that point, I was just getting into high school, starting to play high school athletics. Started on the basketball team and track team and my cross country team my sophomore year. So that was another notch where that self-esteem grew. A lot of good people in my life at that particular point, and my basketball career and track career in particular just took off. And so by my senior year, I started thinking about college, and fortunately was able to get a scholarship and go to Kentucky Wesleyan College, where I had 4 of the greatest years that I think any college student athlete could have. Where I went in as a poor student, academically ineligible after winning the national championship my first year, and traveling to Africa during the summer, teaching basketball, but I had to get back to college to get that grade point average up to be able to play basketball and continue my career there, which was a real motivator, because I really loved the sport and really wanted to participate. The team concept was great for me. My coach, Guy Strong, there, who gave me an opportunity to prove myself, and that whole 4 years, and I won't take you through the whole thing, but that 4 years were probably the greatest experience that I had from an academic and an athletic, and being involved in the college community. So after that, I was able to travel for the 1968 Olympics, and became an alternate on that team. We made All-American 2 years in a row. We won 2 more national championships, and was able to get drafted both the ABA and the NBA. I chose the ABA and had what I call a brief cup of coffee. Professional sports, had an opportunity to play there in my hometown of Louisville for the Kentucky Colonels, which was a great experience, a great character building and so forth, and gained a lot of relationships that helped me move to the next level, and start to work with KFC. So that's how we got to KFC in that particular transition of my life. After working with KFC for 8 years in all of the different departments that I worked in, in each being a step up from training to operations to franchising and working with franchisees and helping them make money, I decided that if an opportunity ever came about, that I wanted to have that opportunity. As a matter of fact, I even took a vacation and left and went to Burger King and became a Burger King franchisee during that vacation period, and came back with the idea of actually leaving KFC to get into the Burger King business. But they talked me out of it and asked me to stay around, that they had something development, which was a Kentucky Fried Chicken minority franchising program that were helping minorities have an opportunity to get into franchising, especially with the guarantee of KFC and the banks that they were working with. So that's how I got into the KFC business. 1984, I opened my first restaurant, KFC, in Auburndale, Florida. We were just extremely successful. That first year, we opened with a bang. The average KFC was doing about $650,000. We opened doing $1 million right off the bat, and it was crazy. A number of times I felt like just locking the doors because we just didn't have an opportunity to breathe. I thought that I knew what I was doing. I thought I would be prepared, but I wasn't. We had a great location, and they were coming from all over Central Florida to try our product, and we just rolled along for 5 years, and it was just extremely busy. We won a number of different awards in that restaurant. We also opened up several other restaurants during that period of time, and two of those restaurants were really successful. The third one was not so successful. Then we hit another major bump in my life, and that's when our number one restaurant, one April morning, I get this call from someone, and so said that your Mr. Tinsley, your Kentucky Fried Chicken's on fire. I said, yeah, okay, trick or treat, and April Fools. I'm sorry, April Fools, and went back to sleep. The phone rang again in about 10 minutes. Mr. Tinsley, your restaurant's on fire. So I said, there may be something to this. Jumped up. My wife asked what's going on. I said, I don't know. I need to get down here to Auburndale and find out what's happening. And as I drove down, I'll never forget this big cloud of smoke that was out there. And I saw all of this traffic, sirens of fire trucks and so forth. And when I got there and pulled on the pad, fire was 15 feet above this restaurant. Now, this is our number one restaurant that at that time was doing about $1.2 million. I had 46 employees working for me, our staff and everyone. It just seemed like everybody was standing out there in the street looking. And having had the opportunity of building this restaurant from the ground up, I kind of took a step back, went back into my cranial history of getting to this particular point, and I said, well, if we've done this before, we can do this again. So I mentally started preparing myself to rebuild and get this restaurant back up and take care of this community, because we had people coming from all the different businesses expressing their sympathy and so forth. But I didn't want to have a pity party, and I didn't want my people to feel down and depressed because we did this once, we can do it again. Besides, it would give us an opportunity to look at some of the areas that we mentioned before, that we missed before when we built this restaurant, to grow our volume, because we built it at 650. We were doing over $1 million, and we had a problem with throughput, with drive-through, and just about all of our service points. So this gave me an opportunity to go back to the drawing board and get it done. But also, I'm thinking that, how do I take care of my customers while we're down? And as I looked out into the street, I saw all the traffic backed up in this one group of vehicles there, where they were lunch trucks that were going around to different businesses, delivering sandwiches and so forth. So the idea came to me that, let's develop a KFC on wheels. And as you see there, that we developed this, bought this truck. We put a warming cabinet, cash register, and the whole inside we set up just like a regular restaurant, if you will, with all of our appropriate things, tools to keep temperatures and so forth. And we decided what menu we could keep in there for an hour or 2 hours while we were driving around. So we put this truck together, and I went to the other 2 restaurants I had, kind of rotating between the 2, loaded up early in the morning. But let me back up. The first thing I did was I followed those lunch trucks to all of the different locations they were visiting. Took me about a week to get their schedules down and kind of coordinate what I was going to do. And so I decided that we'd get loaded up at the other 2 restaurants, the more snackables than anything else, lunch items, and we would load up in that. Now, of course, I'm 6'5", and you can only imagine me inside of this truck, and I would get my 2 children that would come along with me sometime. I had another good friend that would come and work with me, but I would drive through those different locations, get there before the lunch truck, and people would come out of their offices. State Farm, which was a big employer in our area, they actually ran me off the property one time because it disrupted their service internally there. So it became a big hit. I had a little horn on there that I would play, and it would cluck, cluck, cluck like a chicken. And as I was driving from spot to spot, I noticed that traffic was rolling behind me. It's like the ice cream truck driving through the area. We would, after we hit those spots, we would go through some of the neighborhoods and be able to sell the rest out of the truck. And at the end of the day, we would pull back right where you see it now on the front of the property and sit there and just letting people know, because the sign was still there, letting people know that we were coming back and in a short period of time, and had a chance to articulate that message to our customers. This was before social media, so we didn't have that opportunity to do that. That would have really taken us to a whole new level if the timing was right there. But in this truck, we were doing approximately $1,500 a day, and that was 6 days a week. Sunday we took off, but Monday through Saturday we rolled the truck. Myself, my kids, and my friend, we drove it. As a matter of fact, I even developed a second truck during that period. It took me about 65 days to get this restaurant back up and going. So we finally worked through all of the different kinks that we'd had before to open this restaurant, and we got it back open, as I said, right about 65 days. And when we opened, they came from everywhere. We went from the 1.2 million that we were doing up to 2 million. So it was a very successful scenario there, where we turned an obstacle into an opportunity. It was one of the most exciting stories that I can think of as a franchisee. And there's in any of you out there that are franchisees, I know, if you haven't already, you're going to go through some rough times, and preparing yourself, having yourself in a mental state to be able to take on these challenges and move on to the next level, because every opportunity, every setback provides an opportunity for a step forward. So as we moved on, we developed other restaurants. We started to moving into, if you can bounce back that slide back to the multiple restaurant franchises. There we go. Thank you. We developed the Shula Burgers, Shula Bar and Grill with Don Shula there in the Tampa airport. The Wendy's, we have a Wendy's in Tampa, and we have a Wendy's in also in Fort Myers airport. Before you get into the airport, the Plaza, Payway, PF Chang's, and Starbucks in different locations. We do not have a picture of any of the restaurants in Miami, but it's been a good run, and we've working with each one of these brands has been a tremendous honor. And I always tell people, franchise from moving into franchise provides an opportunity for resources that each one of these brands bring to the party. you as a business person obviously have to manage it and use their resource tools, marketing, advertising, and the full gamut, and making sure you get the value of the money that you pay in royalties and so forth to make it work. Location's always the key, but you got a strong brand can certainly take you to a new level. So this is just a few of the restaurants that we have. We can move back to the family slide now. And wanted to make sure that I did not forget that my wife, who has been my partner since we started this business, she was a successful radio business. She ran radio stations in Atlanta where we were, in Jacksonville where we were. So she quit her career to join in and help me get our business off the ground and moving. Our two children who have been an integral part of our business. Unfortunately, in the last year, we've lost our daughter due to a long-term illness, but my son is still with us, and he's transitioning into the business. And we're looking forward to the next step in our career once we get this COVID-19 situation behind us and we're able to get back out and get moving and so forth. I think that we'll be able to, with the new norms that are coming about with our franchise business, with our food and beverage business, there's a great learning out of that. And there's a new norm, if you will, and drive-throughs have been very successful on the street. Our KFC has been doing extremely well through the drive-through, and so I look for a number of different new exciting things to happen once we get there. So we look forward to it, and that's my presentation, and I look forward to answering any questions that any of you might have.
Thank you so much, George. I'm going to invite Brian back in to chat with you. I think that we may have a couple questions. And also, I think we would all love to hear a little bit more about your book.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can.
Yes. Okay. Well, the book is a collaboration between myself and a good friend, James Greeby, who worked with me. It kind of takes you through my entire life history up to the point of the book and my professional basketball background, the interaction with the NBA players, where I was chairman of the board of the NBA Retired Players Association. That's both ABA, NBA, and Globetrotters that are all members of this association. So I stay pretty close to the guys, and quite a few of my employees actually went on into the NBA playing basketball. So if you please, you can read it online. You can get it online, or you can order it and enjoy it.
Yeah, George, there was so much more to your story that I think people could really, dig into. One of my favorite things that we talked about on the podcast was actually how you got into the airport business, like how you went from a street franchisee to the airport business and the struggle there. Could you just kind of give us like a kind of highlights version of how you got into the airport industry?
Sure. There was an opportunity in Tampa for a Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise there. And so a friend of mine contacted me at KFC. And so I went out to take a look at it. I've never been in the airport business, but another friend actually had a business in the Orlando airport. So I'd gone to visit him also to try to get a quick understanding. Fell in love with it just by the experience of the interactions between him and his customers. And so I thought this might be a great opportunity. So another friend in Atlanta who knew a guy that actually had been in the business called me, and we made telephone contact. His name was Clarence Daniels. Clarence flew in the next day from California. We met and decided to go after this proposal in Tampa, and what's called an RFP, request for proposal. So we whipped this thing together and got got it there by Friday to apply for the opportunity, and which we did, to put a KFC and some other concession pieces there. It failed. We did not win. We sat at a little bar and had a beer and actually watched the O.J. Simpson chase that was going on through Los Angeles at that particular time. But on the way out, we saw this other facility. It was a white tablecloth which no one had actually bid on. So what we did, we said, well, let's see if we can find something and go after this. Which I contacted a number of different franchise groups, and one was TGI Fridays. Fridays said, let us take a quick look. They did. They liked it. I made the proposal to the Tampa airport. They said, fine. We partnered with HMS Host, which was a master concessionaire who had the master contract. And we partnered up and went after that Fridays. We built it. We had the projection was for right at 2.5 million estimated volume. So we got that restaurant open, and it went from 2.5 right up to 9 million a year. Became the #1 TGI Fridays in the nation for 9 years, and we actually in 2016. So we ran it for about 22, 23 years. 2016, the airport went under complete reconstruction, and we had to close that restaurant down. But it was a great franchise there, and a lot of people still run in today. Said, I met my wife there, and so forth. So that's how we got into the airport business. We were so successful that it opened up other opportunities in other airports.
Yeah, what I love about that story is a lot of people, could have had, something that they were really, really excited about not turn out, and just walked out of the airport with their mind closed, their eyes closed to opportunity. Instead, you still had your head up and you're like looking, and you saw something else, and it turned into maybe what would be, sent you in a completely different direction as an entrepreneur and a franchisee, and could have been one of the biggest successes. $9 million out of one location is got to be truly impressive. So
very impressive. It was really rewarding.
Yeah, it had to be exciting. So we had some really good questions starting to come in, and one of them that I think is interesting is, and it's something that I deal with as well, is you said that your wife is your partner, and she's somebody that you've worked with from day one, from the very, very beginning. And a lot of us are working with our spouses in franchising. It's very common for it to be a husband-wife team that launches it. That's what I am with my wife, is a husband-wife team. What is some kind of wisdom that you've learned over the years about working with your spouse and building this franchise business?
Well, let me tell you, it's an experience. We've been married 48 years, so that period of time, I've learned how to actually work with my wife. Now, when we first started, I think it may have been 6 months after we were open. I was running the drive-through. She was packing. She mispacked an order, which was my story. She says that's what I told her to do. That's her story. And so she said, I tell you what, I quit. And she walked out of the restaurant now as a part of the staff. And she started handling the administrative piece of the business. And basically where I'm going with this is that we each have a niche inside of what we do. And excuse me, she's the detail, the administrator, and stays on top of all the little bitty things. She explains that I go out and get all the work to bring it back, so she does it. But it's not an easy task. It's one that will test you. It's one where you have to listen, you have to understand and respect one another's opinion. Even though you might be right, you learn to navigate through it, and then when the children come into it, it adds another layer. My son is now in the business, and that's makes it interesting also. But we get through it, and we each have our own little sandbox that we play in, and keeping all things moving forward.
Bringing your son into the business, or your children into the business, was that something that was a goal for you, or is that something that happened, organically?
It was a goal. It was a goal, and I would say it was a goal for me. It was not a goal for him. We're still walking through that. When you actually make the sacrifices, and you actually do the dirty work and getting things done, you have a certain passion and feeling about day-to-day operations, your people, and et cetera, your customers, community involvement, all of those things. So that's not something organically that I think the next generation actually pick up. They've got to kind of walk into it with their own feel. And I run into a number of children and parents that are working together. Some work great together. Some, it just does not work. And so it's once again, it's one of those cases of kind of walking through it. My daughter wanted nothing to do with it. They both kind of felt we worked too hard because we have really poured ourselves into it. Not only the business, but the other part of it, the community, the building of people, giving back, and so forth. That's all an integral part of being successful.
Hey, just a quick follow-up on that. I talked to a lot of people, George, that want to get into business for legacy for their kids. And looking back, what advice would you give someone's kid if they came to you and their kid came to you and said, they're 16, 17, 18, 20 years old, they just graduated from high school, they just graduated from college. What advice would you give that kid who wants to do something more than go get a job somewhere? There's a business that they can go into if the opportunity is there for them. What advice would you give that kid?
Well, my first question would be, do you really want to do this? Is this something that you have a passion for, or is this something that it's a tool to open another door for you to do something that may be your passion? And probably more than average is going to be they want to do something that's their passion. They don't want to work as hard as you do, and they don't want to get into competition with you. And I think a lot of that happens fathers, sons, in any way. And especially if they have the same first and last name, it makes it a little difficult. So that would be the first thing. But I would suggest that they have that long conversation with their parents and come to an understanding that they may be there for a short period of time. Their goal is to move forward. They appreciate the legacy opportunity, but that's just not their passion. And I think that the sooner that conversation happens, the better off it is for all. And it gives the parent an opportunity to decide whether they want to sell, or they want to continue to run, or they may want to turn that business over to their employee base.
Yeah, that's a good transition. So one of the questions that we had is you clearly still have a passion for entrepreneurship, for franchising, for your community, tons of fire and energy. What are your future goals? What do you want to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I want to keep pushing the envelope here to see where this takes us. This COVID scenario has actually been a big bump in the road where we have to slow down and make sure that every step is well thought out, well planned to make sure you don't lose it all. We have quite a few restaurants that are closed today because they're in the airports and traffic's down, and so therefore it just doesn't make sense to operate. And of course, the political climate doesn't help with things either. So we have to be very careful step by step as we move forward. But there's a lot of opportunities that are opening up, franchise opportunities that are opening up across the board. And there's new ways of doing business. Right? If I were opening a restaurant today, it would definitely be a drive-through with very limited service inside. I think that's going to be the way to go for a while until this gets cleared out. Because at this particular point, there's so many people that have emotional draws on both sides of the mask and the CDC, and whether they believe this virus is a hoax or if it's real. And you could very easily have a bad situation in your business if you don't handle this the right way. So drive-throughs, we can conquer getting cars through and moving. I think that's the way to go in the food service business. And of course, in the airports, we're still trying to figure that out. We're going to take some assistance from the government. It's going to take some understanding from the aviation. Is going to take aviation departments, from the airlines, from the whole entity, concessionaires, and so forth, all working together on the same page with a plan to make us all healthy.
Okay, one last question. So a lot of our franchisees that are attending, they may be relatively new, and they're dealing with a lot. They feel like they're maybe behind, definitely not on plan. Like, do you have any advice for kind of coping with the stress of the current situation?
Well, don't drink. Don't turn to drinking. Don't do anything crazy. This too will pass. Just more frequently than you have in the past, analyze your business. Look at your trends. Look at where you can save on labor, where you can save on cost of goods. Look at your opportunities and monitor. Be very close to your business. Do not be an absentee owner. You have to be on top of things to see what's happening and be very nimble and be able to switch directions when things are actually changing. So because cost, labor, and certainly monitoring your staff from the standpoint of all the CDC guidelines as they come to work, and making sure that you don't have a virus breakout in your business. So there's still hope. I'm very optimistic. I feel that as many of these kinds of conferences, get-togethers that you can attend, don't be afraid to ask questions. There's no bad question. See what other people are doing. Be willing to learn. Listen. You're not going in it as a know-it-all, or you don't even go. Listen to what people are saying and decide out of that what makes sense to you. Everything that's being said doesn't always work with you, and you got to have the right attitude towards it, and to be a strong leader for your employees to know that you're confident in being successful, and it gains their confidence to work and do what they do. But if they see that you're negative and you're about everything that's happening, and it transitions down, and it will cross that counter to your customers also.
George, thanks so much for the time today. Everybody make sure you go out and you buy George's book. We sent a link out to everybody in the chat. And George, once again, thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, guys, George, that was incredible. Thank you. I love your mindset around things and working on the business. It's clear you have a handle on your business and you're making really, really smart decisions, and you're not an absent from your business. Everyone out there, if you go buy his book on Amazon, it's not going to get him rich. But these authors don't make money off of books. But if you've enjoyed this today, buy the book on Amazon, and more importantly than buying the book, leave a review, and that means a lot. So George, thanks again.
Erik, I want to thank you, thank Brian, thank Katie, and thank Heather for all helping and putting this together. I appreciate it.
Brian, what's next?
It's all you, man. So now we're jumping into our semi-absentee panel. So I think I'm going. All right.
I've been waiting for this, everyone. I'm going to do some introductions on our panel today, and then there's some questions that were coming up throughout the day so far, and we're going to get to those. So if you didn't get your question answered, please bring it up again That way we can get it answered at the end of this form. We want to make sure a lot of questions get answered. But first up, we have my friend Henry Kim. Now, Henry has been 16 years in software technology sales, 12 years in franchising, 6 massage MBAs in that Northern Virginia, DC market, and has had numerous awards over the years. He also owns 2 amazing lash studios in that same market. He's been ranked #1 studio in the entire network in July and August in 2019. He's also a regional developer, area developer, master franchise, whatever you want to say. He's that, along with his fantastic business partner, Steven, who I'm friends with. But he signed also an agreement with Yoga 6 to get 6 yoga studios open up in Raleigh, North Carolina. He's also on the board of directors for American Massage and Bodywork Institute. It's a massage therapy school. So Henry, give everyone a wave. I'm going to continue on introducing people. We got 8, and by the way, Henry's a member of the Franchise Tribe Mastermind as well. So I love that. Amy Hudson, also a member of the Franchise Tribe Mastermind. She's a franchisee with Exercise Coach, and she has 2 locations in Minneapolis. She's been with them, semi-absentee, for 3.5 years. She's a former high school teacher, current mom doing this. She's also married to Jesse, who works at the franchisor as the franchise development, who's a fantastic guy. He gives his wife a ton of credit for what she's built there. And Amy's also the social media director for Exercise Coach. If you ever followed any of their stuff, I'm impressed with it, and she's doing a fantastic job there. And lastly, she's a podcast co-host for Strength Changes Everything with the CEO of Exercise Coach, Brian. And then I think we might have Jack Sparks. He's there. I see his name or the telephone number come up. Jack's in the aftermath of a hurricane in Atlanta, dialing in. Thanks for coming, Jack. Graduated University of Alabama, then graduated business school in Lausanne, Switzerland. I wonder which one was more fun for him. 20 years in banking, currently the senior vice president, the manager of commercial banking for First Citizens Bank, and he's been there since 2007. His wife, Marcella, and him have 3 young kids, 4, 7, and 8, kind of around my kids' age. And they purchased 4 Mosquito Joe franchises in Northern Atlanta. And they bought them in 2014, started operations in 2015, and they began as semi-absentee owners. And I'll leave it at this. They had a big swing and a miss for their first 2 managers in business. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. They did get their 3rd one right in their 2nd month in business, and I'm glad it was a good fit for them. But he's in a system, Mosquito Joe, that does not have a lot of semi-absentee owners. So this is the lineup of panelists for today. So everyone, thank you for joining.
Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, guys, I've been excited about this panel, and we're going to have a lot of questions come in. There's 3 main themes that I want to cover today. I've got a million questions around them, but I want to make sure we're going to leave some good time for some Q&A with everybody else at the end of this. But I want to start out with you, Henry, if we could. And I just want to know, like, as a semi-absentee owner, you looking back, I mean, you've been in it for 12 years, what's the biggest challenge that you had, and how did you overcome that challenge?
That's a very good question. And I think this answer is true no matter what industry, no matter what franchise that you're in. It's always a challenge, and it's the people. You can find the best talent and develop them and retain them. For us, that's always been and continues to be our biggest challenge, and that's why we've always, from the get-go, focused on having a family style culture where we want our employees to feel like they are really part of a family outside of their own home. And so that's probably the biggest challenge is finding, retaining, and developing that talent.
think Jack would agree with that with finding. I'm going to have you up next, Jack. But I want to say this about Henry and your business partner, Stephen. I had the opportunity to do some consulting with you guys, and I was on a Zoom call with a lot of your management. And it's very clear that you have that family style culture. And one of the things that I've noticed is that you invest into your people. Can you just share a little bit about that before we go over to Jack and ask him the same question? What do you do to invest into your people, who are the biggest challenge? People.
Yeah, so we try to do a good job up front. We've used scoring kind of personality tests, scoring tests to make sure they're a right fit for our business. We go through a really rigorous interview process. We make it really hard to get hired, and we tell them that up front. We set that expectation that we have really high standards here, and at least you're at the stage where we're talking to you in this first interview or whatever stage they are in. So up front, there's tools that we use. In terms of development, once we get the talent, we always want to hire the best and trust them, but we have to continue to develop them. So we've invested a lot of resources into, for example, the 4 disciplines of execution was probably a huge investment for us.
Get specific, man. I want to get specific here for the folks. When you say huge investment, was that like
$40,000? $40,000 investment for us to have Franklin Covey, one of their training experts, come in and over the course of 3 days train all of our leadership, all of our managers and our directors in the various brands, and for Stephen and I as well. And so we still follow the 4 disciplines of execution. We, choose a wildly important goal every year. A lot of times the goal doesn't change, but sometimes we'll add a goal, but never more than 2. One year we had 3 goals and we didn't do very well in any of the 3. So we're of the mindset that less is more, maybe 2 wildly important goals, but certainly less is more in that case. And beyond that, we've invested in other types of sales training with you all recently, with you and Ryan Casey, and that was a smaller investment, but our director just the other day said that from that training, we're starting to see the improvements, and all of the locations have improved their sales closing. But it wasn't just sales that we learned a lot about. From Ryan and you, we learned a lot about creating that community and talking about the community as well. And so that has really helped. We continue to invest in terms of reading a lot of other books, and then just kind of each week going over a couple of chapters with the leadership and kind of having each one go around and share what they learned and what their thoughts are, and then how they plan to actually use it and put it into action.
That's awesome. And I think the big takeaway from that is it's so easy to look at a business and think they just got lucky hiring the right person from the beginning, or in Jack's case, the 3rd person, and they just got lucky. But it takes time and money investing into your team. And we'll get into team here in a little bit, but it's obvious why you're able to do that. Jack, thanks for coming on. And I hope the power is going to stay on for a little bit and you're going to stay dry. Same question.
Certainly.
What was your biggest challenge and how did you overcome it?
Well, I would say, you've already mentioned it, and then Henry certainly touched on it as well. It's people. As an absentee owner, for us, the day-to-day management of it. Fortunately, with my job, I can check in on the office and things like that, but the true day-to-day management, you're beholden this person. So as you mentioned, we hired a lady. I mean, Mosquito Joe is seasonal here in Atlanta. We are operational from March through the first week of November. So, next week will be our last week operating here. So it's seasonal. And I needed somebody to manage technicians that, again, are only going to be employed seasonal, and hired a lady that I thought was going to be a great fit, had managed a lawn care service in another state, and I'm thinking she's going to be perfect. And she went to training. We sent her up for about a week or so, and then she came back, and 2 days later she resigned.
So
Yeah.
You bought this franchise, full-time job. You figured you're going to do it semi-absentee. You hired this lady because she had some industry experience, at least, lawn stuff on the outside. Send her to training, which is a big investment in itself, to send them to training. And you're putting like all your eggs in that one basket, hoping that they can run the business for you. So they're there, they come back. Give it, like, what happened? Like, tell me about that phone call that you got. When did you realize she actually quit?
Well, so we had a pretty good interview process. I keyed in on this lady from phone interviews simply, again, just the industry. I'm thinking there's so many similarities with lawn care. You're having to look at weather. Is it raining in this section of town? Go back over to this section of town. Then the clouds already passed, and the seasonality of it. So, we spoke with her, we told her, all our eggs are with you. So please, if we're to do this, we need you to at least stick out, the first full year. I mean, we want you long-term. And, she's telling us all the right things. And Mosquito Joe's headquartered in Virginia Beach. We sent her up there for a week. She came back on Monday. We had a lawn and garden show that was going to be our big launch here in Atlanta. It's a fairly large lawn and garden show. And, anyway, Monday we plan, and everything's looking good. Tuesday we're going to pack up some items and take it over to the convention center. And I am with my kids, for breakfast, and they're having something to eat. I'm sitting down with them. I look on my phone because she sent me an email, and I dropped a word that my wife got onto me for in front of the children. And she said, "Hey, watch your language." And I showed her my phone, and at that point in time, I mean, as an absentee owner, you're calling in, to work, saying I can't come in today. My wife and I are packing up the van, doing everything. We're running everything on our own at that point, and we quickly went to our number two option, which again was really not a good fit. We were in the middle of a convention, ready to start our season the next week. I told my wife, hey, look, if she can. If she can hold a good conversation and stay on the phone, I mean, I'm going to hire her because we don't have any other option. And she ended up being a poor fit. But back to the first lady, I think she got overwhelmed, thinking, that you're truly going to run it. I mean, we were pretty clear about that in the interview process, but I think she went up to Virginia Beach and saw what that was going to entail. And her story was her and her husband had a lawn care company. She got divorced from him. She was moving down to Atlanta to get a new start. I think in reality, she was maybe not as involved in the business as she led me to believe during the interview process. And I think she got intimidated with what was going to have to be done. So it's kind of a nightmare scenario for us. My wife is in healthcare. She had a really good relationship with a receptionist at an office that was really a nonprofit, packed offices, some tough situations. And she always did a great job maintaining order, and she's who we ended up hiring, and she's still with us today. So she was a great fit, but again, kind of a nightmare scenario for husband and wife that are investing a lot of money and really counting on this one person to lead you. Again, it was the day we were supposed to go and set up for our big launch that year. So I'm glad it's in the rearview mirror now.
And Jack, today you're one of the top franchisees at Mosquito Joe, right?
Well, I mean, there's different ways to slice it, but yeah, we've been fortunate. There's I don't know, a couple of hundred different franchisees. We're usually in the top 15 or so in the system. So we are a bit of an oddity. Most of them are very hands-on. The evolution typically inside Mosquito Joe it's been around since 2013. So you're seeing it. A lot of people are hands-on, and then they grow to a certain size where they can hire managers and train them themselves, and then they begin to step away. I'm kind of the opposite. You know, we had to grow it from afar, and I am a reference for Mosquito Joe anytime somebody's looking to do it on their own, absentee. And yeah, I just tell people, you know, you're going to have to be comfortable going to bed each night knowing that your business is probably not running as good as it could if you were there day to day. And you just got to be comfortable with that. I mean, I have more overhead than others who are in it day to day because I've got to pay other people. I mean, some people can start out running it from their house. I mean, it was not an option for us. So I knew we were going to go deeper in the red to start this by being absentee. But fortunately, it's worked out for us.
That's great. And that's so true. And I love the different experiences here. Henry started out with a partnership in the beauty industry or health massage industry, whatever you want to call that. And you got Jack that's in the service-based industry, which not a lot of people are really doing it truly semi-absentee in that. And the next question is going to be kind of around what's your day-to-day. And then we got Amy Hudson over here, who a school teacher, mom, and then went into this full time. And they had to, they knew what they were getting into when they started Exercise Coach. But Amy's, I had her on the podcast, and Franchise Secrets podcast. So listen to that interview. It was fantastic. I know her and her husband, and they're just fantastic people. So Amy, thank you for being on the panel. Same question to you. What was your biggest challenge and how did you overcome it?
Awesome. So, I mean, I would echo what Henry and Jack actually said, and employees are everything. And what I'll say, I'm going to actually say something else because it'll be more interesting, but it's easy to buy a brand because you think that the brand is great and you think that it can perform and you like the business model. And even in fact, because you think that you as an operator could probably do a good job selling the product or service, whatever it is, right? Like this is a sellable service, but it's another skill entirely to develop leaders within your organization to do that same job when you're gone. And that isn't always taught by a franchisor. We have a business model and we have training on how to execute the business for an operator or employees, but we don't necessarily get taught how to develop other leaders. And so my biggest obstacle was not having a good plan for development of my employees at first. And that translated into having more turnover than I would have liked at the beginning, and a lack of clarity for me on where we were going as a team. Coupled with that, I would say too, you mentioned I used to be a teacher, and I would say the growth mindset versus a fixed mindset was a big obstacle that I was in my own way. When things didn't go easily or as well as I wanted them to, if I hit a bump in the road, I would think like, well, I'm just not cut out for this, and this is something is existentially wrong with the customers or whatever, the brand, or there's something wrong that it's not my fault. Well, the growth mindset says, everything can be learned. Anyone can grow, anybody can be groomed. And to apply that mindset to yourself as the owner, like this is a figure outable problem, and to your employees, you can be groomed to be as good as I am at doing this job, makes a huge difference in how much they do grow and what they can do for you.
That's great. And one of the mastermind members sent me a book out of the blue. I always get Amazon packages coming in, and I'm like, I really didn't order this book. I told my wife, she's like, yeah, right. And it's called Your Next 5 Moves. And I am loving this book. So if you want to check out another book, it's called Your Next 5 Moves, but he talks about that, Amy. The author talks about that growth mindset in making decisions and making really good decisions. But I see that as a stumbling block for so many people. And one of the things is, if you don't have a growth mindset, you are always blaming other people, the franchisor, the market, the customers, everything. But if you have that growth mindset and you want to get better at making really good decisions, you are looking at yourself and what you can do to change, even though there's real stuff going on out there, but you're looking back and what can I do to change the situation and how can I grow out of this? So I love that you said that. I want to go to Jack next if we could. And I just want to talk about like today, what is a day in the life? What's your role? So number one, what's your role in the business? If you had to define your role in the business, is it CEO? Is it COO? Is it board of director? What is your role in the business? And what does a day or week in the life look like for you?
Yeah, I would say it's more CEO. The lady who I mentioned that was, our third time was a charm. She's still with us. She manages the office. That was kind of her role at the beginning. As the organization grew, operations became more of a focus, and it was kind of bleeding quite a bit of my time. So we hired operations managers who's really serving as a general manager now. So I would categorize him as kind of COO. So a typical day for me, I'm talking with him. His name is Chris. He's texting me right now about, some items as I'm on this call. So we're constantly in contact throughout the day, but he's there, he's managing operations. He's done a great job for us. I am always going to look over finances. I'm always going to crunch the numbers. I'm always going to look at the key performance indicators, big picture. Chris and I, we have a weekly meeting where we're just constantly updating, our strategies and making sure we're on the same page. Every night at 6 o'clock, our office closes. That's about the time I'm trying to wrap up everything here at home and get kids fed and off, get ready for bed. And I'm pulling Mosquito Joe numbers. How many customers did we sign up today? Did we lose any customers? If we did, I'm looking at account notes. Why did we lose them? I'm looking at customer satisfaction scores, projections for the year. So it's not that much time. Certainly after doing it for as long as I have now. It's 15, 20 minutes every night that I'm doing that. And, an hour each week meeting with Chris on a scheduled call, but then again, talking constantly throughout the week. This year with COVID, I wasn't in the office quite as much as I would have liked to have been. I've got an office there where I can drop in and take care of bank items, but also listen and hear how the phone conversations are going. But didn't do that as much this year. But that's kind of my typical my typical week, I would say.
That is classic working on your business. When I heard our keynote saying don't be absentee from your business. Jack, you are not absentee from your business. You're focusing on the things that doesn't take a bunch of time, but it's the things that are really important. And it's the things that you need to make decisions from. You have the information. And what I see in semi-absentee owners, you need to be at the place where you can have the information at your fingertips to be able to make decisions. And along the way, you're growing your team to be able to make the micro decisions and micro mistakes, not the big ones, until they are trusted with the bigger macro decision. So thank you for that.
No,
Let's go over to you, Amy. I didn't give you any prep. It's time. What about you? You're newer into it. You're the exercise coach, which doesn't have a lot of employees. Henry's got a bunch of employees. You don't have a lot of employees because that's the way the business model is. And I like that. But what is it? What is your role as you see it? And what's a day in the life or a week in the life like?
So I see my main role as, some of the things Jack mentioned. I review my KPIs. I spend marketing dollars. I analyze our marketing efforts. I project ahead seasonally for the upcoming, marketing efforts. I network in town. I plan events to kind of like deepen client engagement, but also I check in and I communicate with my managers. So that's the main thing I do is I make sure that the managers are on top of our two buckets that they're responsible for, the clients and the staff. And I'm always talking to them on a weekly basis. And then on a monthly basis about sales and studio performance. On a weekly basis, we talk about kind of what happened that week in the studio client-wise. Are we losing clients? Are we gaining clients? What staffing needs did you see come up this week? How can I help? So it's a mentorship, talking in real time about about the studio and about the needs that we see come up. And so it's kind of a mixture of all those things, but I rarely go into my business.
I was going to
A
ask,
lot of that is remote.
how often are you in there on an average week? How often are you physically in the studio?
So I go in once a week to work out. I get trained by one of my trainers, and I just chit chat with my team in a conversational way. All of the formal communication that we do is over Zoom. So I go in twice a week once to exercise, once to meet with a team member. So that's really it. I do not train clients. I don't deliver any services.
And Henry, we're about to you, how many hours a week are you on Zooms or phone calls with your team? No, I'm sorry, this is for Amy. Amy, before we get to Henry, Amy, how many hours are you on a Zoom meeting or phone calls with your team?
So we do, so my managers we meet every Friday, and every other Friday, my managers are actually in charge of individual studio meetings that they get to run with a template that I've given them of what to kind of cover. And they're comfortable with that. And it's a framework to bring up problems and to teach things and go through things. So I am actually only meeting with my team every other week as a large group over Zoom, which is about an hour every 2 weeks.
Great. I love it. And we got about 15 more minutes, and I'm going to answer. I've got some good questions coming in. I'll get to those. And then somebody asked about the author of The Next 5 Moves. So the author of that book is called Patrick Bet David. Patrick Bet David. Really, really, really good book. And someone else asked about the author of Growth Mindset. I think I was referring to Growth Mindset in The Next 5 Moves. And so Henry, same question to you. What's your current role in the business? Like, if you had to identify what it is, and then what's a day in the life or a week in the life like?
Well, I would say that my role and Stephen's role are really to be coaches and mentors. We have a director for each business, one for Amazing Lash and one for Massage Envy. And so we alternate weeks. One week we're talking to the director of Massage Envy, talking about, what are our top priorities, what are the challenges, what's working, what's not. And we kind of give our perspective on things that we're seeing in the business. And then the alternate week, we're having that call with our director for our Amazing Lash business. We used to once a quarter have quarterly meetings with all the managers. We haven't done that this year. We'd like to get back to doing that. But we really want to just clear the path for our directors and our managers and kind of just stay out of their way. Stephen is probably a lot more active than I am. He likes to go in and visit all the locations. And so that's great. But, our goal whenever we do make a visit to any of our locations, we're not in there really to talk about the business. We had a business coach that years ago told us, don't be a bull in a china shop. Really just go in there and high touch your employees. Ask how they are doing, how are their families doing, and kind of make that connection. And if there is anything negative, then you go talk to the manager about that directly, but you do not go in there and disrupt what's going on in the business. So in the beginning, that was really hard for us. And it continues to sometimes be a challenge, but we've been pretty, good about keeping that part of the promise.
That's good. I remember when I had Solo Salon Studios, and Mirko was our director of operations, and I was on a conference call with him and some of the team members, and I corrected or directed or did something I wasn't supposed to do with one of the team members, and they actually started to cry. And Mirko was like, man, this is my job. Why are you getting involved? And and then one of my other partners called me out on it and said, Erik, you're out of line. He said it nicer than that. And I realized you're right. I was, and I'll never forget that. And I've probably done it a little bit since then, but there's things like that, that us with that growth mindset, always wanting to look at ourselves and what we can do to improve. And that's how we get better. So that's awesome. Another question around that key person, like who is that key person for you guys? And Amy, we'll go to you next. Like, who is the key person and what do they like? Like what's their, are they like full on operations? Do they have a sales mindset? Are they kind of the CEO type person? Are they a doer? Are they just overseeing people? I want to kind of get down to the nitty gritty of what it is, who your key person is. So Amy, that's you.
Yes, great question. The manager is the key person. Each of my stores has its individual manager. And in a nutshell, I tell the managers that you're responsible for overseeing our clients, which has a lot of factors that are related to it, right? Like accounts and engagement, retention, conversions, like the clients, how are they all doing? Are they using our service and are they happy? And our staff. So your job in a nutshell is to oversee the clients and oversee the staff. And at the end of the day, those are the things that you have to ask yourself, are you doing? So, the tasks they have within each of those two buckets vary. For the staff, that's the one that's often overlooked. And, staff development, if there is a new employee that has a gap in knowledge or skill that isn't as good at maybe doing converting new prospects into clients, let's say, or keeping clients happy, they're new to it, they're not that good yet. The part of the manager's job is to shadow that person at various intervals with various we have checklists and we have like visuals that they can tally kind of what they're seeing when they observe a coach working, to make sure that coach is good. And so, the manager has time built into their schedule actually for management related staff development time and coaching clients and overseeing client accounts time.
That's
the big
really
picture.
good though. Let me pause there because I don't think personally, I don't give myself enough space, enough time to be able to do that. And I've recently set aside an hour in my calendar for reading and studying. That's in my calendar because it's really important. And so you as the owner, giving them that space to be able to work on their role. That's not their business, but it's their role. Mm-hmm. That's great. Did you always do that, or is that more of a recent thing?
I saw that my manager at my first location, so now we have two locations, one's young and one's older, was just struggling with time management. And she is so great with people, but sometimes people who are so amazing with individuals and people oriented are less task oriented, which is fine. But she just needed some structure in her time to get done the big bucket things. And so I just realized, I said, okay, 40 hours a week, we're going to take 10, and that's pretty aggressive, but 10 of your 40 hours and block it off where you're not open for receiving clients to coach. You are working on management tasks. And I gave her a specific list of, this is what I want you to do for management tasks, so we don't forget or they don't fall through the cracks. And then this is what would fall under your regular calendar hours. And we just delineated it, and both of my managers know what that is, and they have time for it all, so they're not overwhelmed and feeling like I keep throwing more and more on them without them having the time to do it.
That's awesome. I'm a tips and tricks and tools type guy. So what kind of books or websites or tools or trainings did you use to be able to get that message to your manager? Or was it all up here for you? Was it you?
I did not learn the scheduling, the blocking thing from a book. I'm sure it's in a book, but I've literally used our software scheduling. We use MindBody. So any fitness businesses, beauty businesses, I use the unavailability feature to block time off for management tasks every week. for the managers. And then they know I've given them, you know, notes or lists or whatever that they can refer back to of what they're needing to do during that time.
I think a simple way for any of you out there that are listening to that and you're like, oh, that's really interesting. Just Google time blocking. There's a bunch of stuff out there, and that's probably the simplest way to start. Just Google time blocking and read a book or take some courses or just watch some free YouTube videos on it. And that's probably a good place to start. But to sum it up, Amy, I think just give your manager space to be able to work on them and work on the important things that you really are paying them to do. Henry, what about you? Same question.
What was the question again?
Tell me about your key person. Like, who are they? Who is your key person? And like, are they, you know, you're looking at Traction, the Traction book, or the book Rocket Fuel. Gino Wickman wrote that. And us business owners are usually these visionary type people. A lot of the managers might be visionary, but more likely they're integrators. And so who's your second in command? And give me a little bit of like who they are.
Yeah, so both of our directors are, you know, the most critical parts of the business, as well as the frontline managers. But for Stephen and me, the directors are the most important, because, you know, they're the ones who, after we kind of give them the direction and make certain decisions about what we should do and what we should focus on, it's really their job to make sure that the teams execute that. So, you know, we got our first director of operations at Massage Envy. I think it was when we opened up our third location and fourth location. So we opened them within six months of each other. And it was a struggle. It was somebody we brought in from the outside who just did not really grasp what it took to continue to carry the torch that Stephen and I had started. And so that didn't work out. It was a hard lesson for us. We lost business during that period. We actually shrunk. And then we moved on to a second director, is actually Stephen's sister, and she did a phenomenal job, and carried the torch for several years, you know, and really started to grow our business again. And then she wanted to transition. She's actually a massage therapist for us now. She's much happier. She's less burned out, because less stress from getting beat up by Stephen and me. But then our third director, she kind of grew up within the organization. She started out as a general manager at one of our locations. Then she wanted to take more responsibilities, so we made her a multi-unit manager. And then now she's been our director for, I guess, 4 years now. She does a tremendous job. She really does a great job in developing the managers. That's really her job, not so much Stephen and I as much, although we are involved in the things that she's developing them with and the tools and whatever consultants that we hire. And then our amazing lash studio business, the director there, she actually came from corporate. We wrestled her away from corporate and started out just as a general manager at one location. And then quickly we realized that we really needed to get her to manage at a higher level. And so she's the director over to Amazing Lash Studios.
Before you start wrestling people away from corporate, check your franchise agreement. But there are, you know, sometimes it's a win-win where people from corporate are wanting to transition out, and it's a really good thing because they still love the brand. So another reason to maintain a friendly relationship with some key people at your corporate office. I love that. And the thing that I keep hearing with you guys is that like you are developing your team and you're empowering your second in command, your main person, to develop their teams as well. So Jack, the same question for you, and I'll repeat it once, but I want to let everybody know, in 5 minutes, we're going to start going through some Q&A, and stay tuned. Right after that Q&A, I'm going to give a special announcement. So I have something special for everyone on what's next, like immediately after this. So there's something that I want to share with you guys. But the same question to you, Jack. Who is that second in command, that person that is your key person? What do they like? Who are they? And give us some insight into them.
Sure. Well, that person now would be Chris. I mentioned him earlier. He's our general manager. As we grew, the main person our first 2 or 3 years was our office manager. Signing up customers, you're talking to them, kind of running things from the office. But as you grow, then the operations starts to become more and more of the focus. And we hired Chris as our operations manager last year. He did a great job. Kind of promoted him to general manager this year, which meant it wasn't just operations. He's also overseeing the office. He does everything. He does hiring. Everything's joint for the most part. Not necessarily with our technicians. He pretty much has free reign there to do what he needs to do. But inside our office, we're constantly talking and identifying any issues that may come up. Again, we have our weekly meeting where he's letting me know things. We come up with our plan, and we're taking notes, and then the next week we're following up to see what resolution we've gotten on these various things. We strategize together. He's got an entrepreneur mindset. He cares. He always wants to negotiate a better price no matter what it is, even though it's not necessarily affecting him. That's money for the business, but that's just his mindset. He's been a great fit for us. And kind of like our office manager, he wasn't number one. I hired a guy because technicians can be tough. It's a seasonal employment. So, it's not for everybody. So I was like, I need to get me a military guy in here. Somebody's very by the book and tough. And I hired somebody, and within a week, let him go. Basically doing some stuff that made me not trust him. And then Chris was my number 2, which we ended up calling him back. But Chris is just, like I said, he's been a great fit. He's got an owner's mindset, and you just don't find that everywhere. So very appreciative of him.
That's good. And my word of warning on the owner mindset is they might be too good and actually go start their own franchise, like my friend Mirko did at Solo Salons. We're still really good friends today. And because of the relationship that I had with him, it was a really smooth transition. And I would do anything for that guy. And I know he feels the same. So just that whole relationship piece is what I keep hearing throughout this. Guys, I've also heard it's not easy. Like, to think there's all kinds of lessons and obstacles and things that break and things that have to be overcome. And you have to have some thick skin to be able to do that, and to keep empowering people at the same time. And that's why I like to say, let them make micro mistakes. Let them start to make mistakes on things that don't have a large impact on your business in a negative way. And then they'll begin to make better and better decisions. But I want to bring Brian back in here, because Brian is really good at asking thoughtful, insightful questions. And so Brian, thanks for coming back in. Is there anything that's on your mind that you want to ask?
Yeah,
I didn't think so. I'll keep going.
Yeah, not necessarily questions, but I just want to share some ideas. So as Erik knows this, and probably some people that maybe have listened to the podcast, is like, this is one of my least favorite topics in franchising. Like, the idea of semi-absentee franchise ownership is such a potential landmine for people that are coming in as franchisees. And the reason that we're doing this and doing this panel today is because there's a lot of people that live this semi-absentee franchise ownership as like their actual way that they operate. Almost 50% of my franchise career has been in this semi-absentee role. However, there's a lot of people listening. I don't want anybody who's behind the counter today to think that this is an impossible goal. And I don't want anybody that's like working in their business to think that like, hey, I can listen to these sessions and tomorrow I can become absentee or semi-absentee. If you want to be a semi-absentee franchisee, you need to be better. Like when Amy talks about the way that she runs her operation and her organization, like she is operating at a high level. She's thought about who she is as a leader. She's thought about how the business operates, and she's put a lot of thought of time and attention into that. Semi-absentee is not absent from your business, which is what I think George said, and what a lot of people make mistakes. And maybe I did at certain times in my semi-absentee journey as a franchisee. So but Erik and I did want to provide this panel for you so that you could get some, on the ground reality of what it's like. And it might take you 3 years to go from behind the counter to semi-absentee. And there's nothing wrong with that journey. Everybody in here has a journey. So that was my.
And with that real quick, I've seen comments already, and I know people that are running their business like at probably the dream of most semi-absentee owners. They can take a 6-month vacation and their business runs like clockwork. That's happening out there in this group. And then we have others who are probably just at the point where their manager came back from training and now they're like, this thing of semi-absentee is not achievable and it's going to be a disaster. And why did I even start? There's both extremes, and when I'm talking semi-absentee, my goal for you guys is to give you guys some hope, let you know that it's a challenge, but also the goal is not necessarily just to not work. The goal, everyone's going to have different goals for semi-absentee, but I think the one thing that everybody should have in mind is when I go to sell this business, I want to sell it for the most amount of money that I can. And if you are working in your business today, like you are the manager, you are doing stuff in your business is not worth nearly as much as it would be if you are working it like Henry, like Jack, and like Amy. And so that's the main message that I want to leave you guys with today.
Absolutely agree 100%, but it is a journey.
It's
okay that it takes you longer than maybe you think, which will be like so much of entrepreneurship.
So we get in some questions, Brian?
Absolutely.
They said, I hope it's not a dumb question, and it's absolutely not a dumb question. Carol says, curious, and I love the word curious. We should all be curious. Curious people ask really good questions. So we got more questions coming in. Curious, did any of you have a mentor that's a successful franchisee? So who helped you in your semi-absentee journey? Anybody want to go? Raise your hand or just start talking. Just don't talk over each other. Or I'm just calling somebody. Amy, it's you.
You know what? You're pulling a high school teacher move right there. Like, thanks for volunteering, Amy. No, so that came back to me because I've done that to people. Well, first of all, Brian Holmes and Erik Van Horn are like virtual mentors to me about how to think big scale, about expansion, about large, just bigger picture mindset learnings. And then as a younger franchisee, I mean, we would have franchise conferences and I just sat, there was like the highest performer panel. Now our stores are in that group now, but before we weren't. And so they would just share kind of like tips and tricks at our conferences. And I literally wrote down almost everything they said. And then I just turned around and said, I just need to execute these things, and just studied high performers within our own brand. That's what I did. And I saw those things work for me.
Guys, you take one thing away, get around the high performers. You don't have to be them. You don't have to do everything that they do, but you got to get around them. You've got to be around high performing people, high performing franchisees, because if you're sticking around the low performing franchisees, guess what's going to happen? I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest values in my franchise journey was when we would have conferences and they'd have those high performer panels. Like I just went after those people to develop relationships, and I was constant on it. And then once that kind of switched and I was on the other side and I was on those panels, it was surprising to me how few people were as aggressive as I was about developing those relationships. And I'm like, you guys are missing out because I'll talk to you. I'll share everything that I'm doing with you. I want you to be successful. But there's something that keeps people from doing that. Maybe it's pride. Maybe it's just, I don't know what it is. So
anybody else with a key takeaway or key thing around the mentoring thing, or I'm going to go to another question.
Well, I would just 100% agree with Amy there, right? I mean, as a part of a franchise, that's one of your biggest benefits there. You have other people across the country doing the same thing with the same problems as you. So go seek out those people who are doing it best and find out the solutions. I mean, we constantly communicate within our brand, and that's where I get some of my best ideas. So you got to take advantage of that. That's why you're paying a royalty.
That's good. Rachel has a very good question. It's one of the ones that I had written down in case nobody asked any questions. She says she's currently is very hands-on and trying to transition out of being like in the business at the business all the time. Any advice on how to transition without the staff feeling like I don't care about them? And that was my question. Like, how do you communicate that to your staff? If you were in her position, you were involved in the business, and now you're like, I need to get out of this thing, and yet let them know I still care about them. I'm still in it. My mind's in it. How do you do that? I would pick on somebody. It might be Amy.
I'm glad to go. I
yeah,
can go
I'm sure you guys all have good. Go ahead.
Yeah, so for me, the way that I always positioned it with my team is if I'm stepping up in the organization or out of the organization, that gives them opportunity. So they can step up, they can grow within the organization, they can take on a bigger leadership role. And that's always been who I've been looking for in my organization, people who did want those opportunities and they didn't perceive me stepping out as leaving them behind in the business. So.
Yeah, I would just, and I know Raquel very well, and so her be some big shoes to fill. But Raquel, I think you would still be involved, but not in the day-to-day stuff. I think you can continue to go in and do your high touch and maybe do some of the trainings that you love to do because you used to be a teacher as well. And obviously you have really good people on your team because your studios are in the top in the network. And so you know the ones that you trust, and always have a few that you could potentially choose from, but choose the best one that you have and move them up. And then the others in your organization, like Brian said, can move up as well. I remember, when we hired our first director, it was a little bit difficult for Stephen and me to kind of step back. It took a little bit, but once we let go, things got better, and we kind of learned that our role has shifted now to being more of a coach and mentor to that person that's responsible for operations.
One of the things that there's a lot of questions coming in. I'm getting some text messages from people, and I see stuff coming up in the chat. I want to say this as we get ready to ask probably one or two more questions. After this, I'm going to hold an after party for everybody that's on here. It's going to be the Franchise Tribe Mastermind. Most of those guys are going to be in it, but it's for everybody. And so just right after this, go to tribezoom.com, tribezoom.com, and it'll be a new link. And Jared, you have Jared's part of the mastermind, and he had some questions about like hiring some of these people. And I think we'll be talking about that in that little session. It's going to be super low key and fun, and everybody will be on it. But Brian, do you see any questions that are in here that that we want to make sure the panel is asked? I think we've had some great ones that have come on. And panelists, before we end, I just thank you. I mean, you guys are just such different backgrounds, different stages in your business, different industries, and a lot of value today.
And there's so many good questions in here, and we this is what we're trying to accomplish. This is just the beginning of the Franchise Flywheel event series, and we want to get to all these things. One thing I would kind of like to leave you with is a lot of it is really leadership. And when Amy was talking in the very beginning, 21 Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell really stuck in my head as something everybody, if you haven't, you need to read, because that concept of leadership lid is going to impact everything that you're trying to accomplish when it becomes to semi-absentee. So.
Yeah, I think, guys, any books or things that you've done just to improve leadership, just a quick little answers before we wrap things up. So that'll be the final thing. Like, what kind of practical things that you recommend anybody do from to develop themselves as a leader, to develop leaders in their organization?
This has been a really good book. The Weekly Coaching Conversation by Brian Souza. And that's where, there's 4 different kind of managers that he talks about. There's the micromanager, there's the do-it-all manager that likes to take all the glory and place the blame on others. There's the nice person manager that always says yes and never holds anyone accountable. And then there's the coach. And so that's what we're right now developing. One of our managers, she's a newer manager, and we're kind of reviewing some of the aspects of this book with her. And because not all people who are managers really know what they think manager is supposed to be the boss. And I'm the boss, you do as I say, and I boss you around. And that's absolutely not true. They should absolutely be a coach. And we've said this from the get-go. I always ask our managers, who is our first client? Who is our most important client? And it's always been the team members, your employees. They're number one. And so this is a good book around that.
That's an excellent book, and it's not written as a textbook book. It's like a parable conversation, and that's the Weekly Coaching Conversation. We'll have that link in here before we stop. So Jack, what about you? Anything that you recommend for developing leadership?
Yeah, it's not a book, just a philosophy, really, and you've touched on it as well. I mean, for those people in your organization that you look upon as potential leaders, you got to give them leeway. You cannot be the micromanager. You got to let them make mistakes, and they learn from those mistakes. That's, in sports, the same thing. You see a team keep winning and winning and winning, and they get complacent, but the team loses, and then they start to pay attention. So, when you let your managers make a hiring mistake, they know. When you let your managers decide on maybe a smaller amount of the marketing fund, maybe not a huge amount, but give them some leeway, then they're going to see what works, what doesn't work. So to just give them some freedom to go out there. And I believe you said micro mistakes. I believe in that 100%.
Awesome. Amy, you're next.
So the mindset book, the original OG work is Mindset by Carol Dweck. So that's the original book where she just lays out the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. You could read like 3/4 of the book and get the idea. Man Up by Bedros Keuilian is a good book about own the result that you're living, and what can you do that only you can do, and what can you delegate out. And there's just a lot of joy in delegating, because then it's not the you show, right? So Man Up. And then High Performance Habits by Brendan Burchard, I really appreciated as well. So just how to focus yourself on achieving what you want to achieve and not getting tied down in the little stuff.
As I know some of these guys, I've just met Brendan. I don't know him, but I know he's got a lot of the resource that he has out there. Just get into some of his stuff, because he gives a lot of free things out there. The same with Bedros. I just did a podcast on how I got to know Bedros and how he became a friend and a partner. And the guy is the real deal, and he's always giving. So That's what that I didn't realize at first when I saw a lot of influential people. I thought they just save all of their best stuff for people to pay them a lot of money. It's not true. They give so much of their best stuff. So take advantage of that. And then I'm going to jump off of here. I'm going to go. Michael's already waiting for us in the tribe Zoom. Anybody that wants to join that is welcome to. This is real low key. But Brian, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, so one of the biggest takeaways I have from this is that we maybe need to switch gears and focus on leadership and management in our next session, because I think a lot of people could benefit from that topic on a much deeper dive than we're able to do today. And if you guys have ideas, email us, let us know. Like, this is very much about serving franchisees, helping other franchisees serve each other. That's our commitment level here. And we can learn so much from each other. I've learned more from high performing franchisees than I've learned in any book that I've ever read and anything I've ever been exposed to. So it's just, that's what we want for you guys, is to get that exposure. Some people will say, like, I don't know people to surround myself to like level up my game. And I think it's important that you do that. So this is one way for you to get around those high performing franchisees. Come participate in this, share this with everybody, and let's all get better together.
Yeah, guys, this is just the beginning. This is about you, and we're going to adjust and shift and deliver what is going to help everybody get better. And so guys, thanks again for coming. Brian, thanks for putting a lot of work into this and getting this to where we are right now. And we will see you all on the next Franchise Flywheel event.
Yeah, and thanks, Erik, for agreeing to my crazy plans. So that's a key part of all of this. So.